Have you ever wondered, what if Klee was released on a later patch than Hu Tao? How will the meta play out? How will people like her gameplay? How many people will use her regularly in Spiral Abyss? Additionally, how will Klee perform if Kazuha was released earlier? Today, we'll be covering what if Klee got released in later patches. Before anything, I would just like to put a disclaimer that the statements in this video are purely speculatory. Such takes are meant to be taken with a grain of salt, as this is considered from my perspective and understanding of gameplay preferences. With that said, let's begin. As you can see, I recorded this in the midst of the new Fontaine version after Lyney's banner. That is because by now, Lyney's gameplay must have been understood by most players. I had to wait until Lyney gets a lot more exposure so that I can use his gameplay as well as his team comps as a reference. You see, I'm a proud Klee main. I got her to friendship level 10 and I have her as my go-to Spiral Abyss character. And when you compare the team comp I use for Klee, it should share a lot to how Lyney plays with his go-to team comp. Yep, it's the same team that uses Xiangling, Bennett, and Kazuha, the Mono Pyro. But before we head into the what-ifs, let's recap Klee's talents as well as some of her known gameplay reputations. Being a Catalyst user, her normal attack allows her to throw 3 consecutive explosive attacks. Each normal attack hit has a standard ICD, and this is often the utilized talent when it comes to her animation techniques. Similarly, her charge attack is also utilized the same way, except that this one has no ICD and is arguably her main source of damage at C0. Its damage also increases thanks to her first ascension passive and serves as an additional charge that doesn't consume stamina. Her skill will make Klee throw a Jumpy Dumpty that bounces 3 times and explodes at its last bounce, with the former bounces dealing partial damage for their own. Her skill can also trigger her first ascension passive and it leaves clustered mines upon the final explosion. Lastly, her burst allows her to summon auto-targeting laser attacks that go off if you switch Klee off the field. This kit allows her to become the fastest pyro applicator in the game so far. However, this turned out to be one of the players' complaints during the early parts of Genshin. Klee apparently was infamous for her clunky gameplay for a Catalyst user. Her short range and slow attack animations had earned the many disappointments of early players given how other Catalyst users attack, like Mona, Sucrose, Barbara, and Ningguang. The early parts of Genshin revolved around massive nuke damage coming from Melt and Vaporize, with Overload giving players mixed feelings in regards to its knockback mechanic and extra damage. Klee's attacks are also infamous for knocking mobs off further, thus needing more stamina to get closer and attack. This kinda renders Klee as difficult to use with an Electro character, and due to her fast pyro application, it would be difficult to consistently deal Vaporize damage with her charge attack. I could understand these setbacks to Klee's gameplay, however, nowadays it feels as if Klee could have been better if she was released later in the game. This is where the reference to Lyney's gameplay comes in. The thing about Mono Pyro is that you just obliterate mobs with only pyro damage, and with Xiangling and Bennett, you are already burning your enemies to cinders thanks to the attack buff Archon Bennett, and even more if you have them both at C6, or C5 for Bennett. Lyney has been doing well in terms of DPS, and is probably on par with Hu Tao in her Xingqiu Yelan team. In fact, Lyney allows Mono Pyro to receive more spotlight, at least based on what I'm led to believe. Ever since Diluc and Child, there has been a high regard on Vaporize comps, which became one of the reasons why Hu Tao earned a spot in many of the players' hearts. Hu Tao's ICD doesn't interfere much, allowing her charge attack to nuke consistently, and her kit has been well planned alongside her weapon. Klee didn't really have a signature weapon, but if she were to be on a Mono Pyro, she would be already crazy with Lost Prayers. Assume that in a certain Abyss 12, you're up against large mobs like Geobishops or Consecrated Beasts. If you're using Klee, you'd be spared the hassle of knocking them back to sprint and attack, or minding your animation cancels. If you already have Xiangling and Bennett, which for my case are both C6, the situation becomes fiery and hot with destructive damages like an arson. However, this still wouldn't patch things up against small mobs, as you'll just knock them out of Bennett's burst range, which defeats the purpose of massive obliteration because you have to dash outside Bennett's burst to hit enemies again. I mean, people will still use Hu Tao against larger mobs because she arguably has the best single target DPS. Remember how Kazuha is part of the team comp of Lyney's Mono Pyro? This is where Kazuha comes in. You see, Kazuha has been that staple character that you cannot just remove because of the insurmountable utility his kit offers. He gets your back with his elemental damage increase as well as his large AoE grouping that has a short cooldown on tap. His burst also becomes a huge help in Mono Pyro because it can only absorb Pyro unless it prioritizes another element in certain situations. Not to mention that his skill also brings Klee's fragmented minds with the group's enemies. So at this point, we already have a dream team for a fast Pyro application DPS like Klee. If Lyney is already doing so much with his charge attacks and skill, then one can expect that Klee will be dealing damage of all sorts at a fast rate alongside Xiangling. With Kazuha, dealing with small mobs becomes a lot more convenient and it's easy to exterminate them in one go. Come to think of it, if Klee was released late, she could have had a proper signature weapon, probably something that serves her purpose as a Mono Pyro unit. In a team with Xiangling, Bennett, and Kazuha, her 4th Ascension passive also helps a lot by regenerating elemental energy when she scores a crit hit with her charge attack. As a Klee main who has been a sucker for this team comp, this just feels the most comfortable since you only need to worry about grouping enemies, managing iframes, and spamming clicks and E. If Klee was released later into the game as part of some niche mono elemental meta, I doubt her clunkiness becomes problematic, especially since most niche comps are being overutilized recently. Klee Mono Pyro would probably be among the likes of Nilou Bloom, and her fast Pyro application would have become an asset instead. And now, to answer the question, what if Klee got released in later patches? Well, she would probably be seen as a niche Pyro character kinda like Arataki Itto, Shanha, and Nilou. And given how she can benefit from Kazuha, people would rate her pull priority higher since her AoE doesn't give any more drawbacks. Klee's clunkiness could have also been less emphasized because forming teams for Spiral Abyss are now among endgame players' priority. Overall, I would say Klee could have been more appropriated into the meta. Lyney is currently being well received as a Mono Pyro unit, and Fontaine might have opened up more opportunities for Mono Elemental teams. It's also refreshing to see how HoYoVerse has been diversifying the meta to cater to the characters they add in limited banners. And I hope we get to see more interesting kits in the future for the players to come up with more teams to synergize. I have started making these kinds of videos, so you can expect more upcoming content about Genshin what ifs, as well as some insights about possible future content. If you like this video, please leave a like and make sure to subscribe as well for more contents like these. I hope you have an easy time today. This is EasyMerc, zooming off.